looked at the foundation of my career as Pepsi. I early in my technology career, I had an opportunity, and I spent 3 years as a developer for Pepsi, and that's the foundation. I mean, they were found Fortune 50 company. They were leading edge. They didn't hire a lot of people, but they hired the quote unquote the best of the brightest, best and the brightest. I consider myself fortunate to have been considered part of that, and only left because for my own career growth, and I chose to leave to take an opportunity at Mutual New York because I thought it would be a faster path to director of IT, which it was. And ultimately there at MONY, I was responsible for the 7x24 IT operations for MONY. So there was definitely a significant career step in doing so.
All right, welcome back, everybody. This is Matt Rosenthal, and I want to welcome you to Digging In. So if you're new to this show, I dig into what it takes to be a success in business, in life, and in health. I do this show because I want to help you reach your potential. Along the way, for me, there were so many people that helped me reach my potential. In fact, I'm still trying to reach my full potential. But for me to be able to bring people onto this show that have amazing stories, as our guest does today, and to share those stories with you, that to me is the most I can do to give back. And so I really hope you enjoy watching this show. As I said, today we have an amazing guest. He has a very cool background. He's a very cool guy, and his name is Sandy Vosk. Sandy's going to talk about the combination of experience that he has. But what I find that's really cool about the intersection of what he's done over the years. Now, he has over 4 decades of experience in technology, but he also has, prior to that, but also it's something he's weaved into that, is his experience with social work. In fact, he'll tell you that there was a point in his life where he was going to go in that direction. But you know, the Sandy that I know is, and you're going to get to know right now, has a really, really interesting knack for relationship building and for weaving the human element of anything into how he handles technology. And he works in this specific niche in technology, supply chain management. And he's going to talk about that. In fact, in his bio, he mentions that he was born to he's the son of a truck driver. So he jokes that he was born into supply chain management. So this is going to be really interesting. He has a lot of cool insights. And so, Sandy, I want to welcome you to the show. Grateful to have you here. And thank you. Thank you for being here. How are you?
Thank you for having me. Well, that's a great intro. I so much to chat about. I don't know where to begin. Where would you like to begin?
I'd like to begin by having you talk about, let's begin with where I just kind of kicked us off with, the intersection of where you are now, all the things that you're doing, and how dealing with people, how your experience going back 40 years with the social work, how it plays into everything you're doing right now with supply chain management and your customers.
So, boy, I'm gonna weave it this way. I was always a people person. I grew up in the Bronx. It was a great social network. I had a ground floor apartment where everybody in the neighborhood passed my parents' bedroom window, and I was a social person, a people person. I wasn't sure what I wanted to be, like many, when I went to college, and when I graduated, I ended up with an opportunity working in child welfare, with working in a residential treatment center with kids who were really severely disturbed, and I did that for 2.5 years, where I was working with them, living in the home 3 days a week, and also doing some extra work with them in school. Some of them were not really cognitively disabled, but really emotionally, or came from just horrible situations which would break anyone's heart. No fault of theirs that they ended up in an environment like that. The following 2 years, it's hard to live in an environment like that, and I took a step to work back in New York City, working with kids that are higher functioning in group homes and helping them select school programs, jobs, and help them take the steps to get back into the environment. And it was very enriching. Except the more I got into it, I was like further away from the kids and an ability to really impact them than I was at the residential treatment center. It was frustrating to me. Meanwhile, at that time, there were technology jobs in the New York Times about this thick on a Sunday about, jobs in this huge new field called computer technology. And I knew I had the aptitude because I had gone to the Bronx High School of Science and I was an analytical guy. I was just afraid it would be me in a tube and not people. And I knew I wouldn't like that. But thankfully, 4 decades later, it's been anything but. And I would attest that it is my people skills. It's all about my ability to understand that technology is an enabler. It's a tool that could help people and help improve processes when applied correctly. If not, it could create either no use or damage as well. And so I really strive and continue every day, even to now, we're in such an exciting field, to learn, understand, and be able to teach and communicate to help others use technology effectively.
Yeah, and you just came back from speaking at an event, and I mean, isn't that what you really were there for? You have such a wealth of knowledge, and it's the same intersection. You're meeting with a lot of people, you're speaking in front of a lot of people, and the ability to share what you've learned in technology, but at the same time to connect with these people, right? That must be rewarding for you.
It is, and not from an ego perspective. And I mean that sincerely. It's not about, I did this or I shared that. In 3 out of 4 situations, and 3 out of 5 in the recent public speaking, quote unquote, opportunities I've had, 3 have been moderating very interesting and unique panels. And that's been tremendous because you get a chance to have interaction with other professionals, lead with questions, include the audience, and weave a discussion that has interest and it's engaging. It's a topic that's of interest. People are interested, but how you weave a discussion means everything in terms of how people perceive it, whether they connect to it, whether they remember it, whether they comprehend it.
Yeah, there's no question. And so tell me, so just bring me back for a second again to where you made that decision to go into technology, right? You had this fork in the road, it sounds like, at some point, and you chose the technology fork, and I guess there were a lot of jobs at the time, and so it made a lot of sense, and it's been good to you. You've been in this field for a long time. Um, did you ever look back and say, well, the amount of people, the amount of lives I could have impacted if had I stayed on that track of social work? Do you ever think about that other path you could have taken?
Yeah, I do sometimes, in the sense that, my sister's a clinical psychologist, and, I think everything's just harder today, Matt. Everything in life is 10 to 100 times harder because of the pandemic, the negative news, the stress of our lives and keeping up with change, constant change, that's coming at us faster and faster. So people need assistance. But what I believe and why I'm so buzzed about what I do is I'm helping a lot of people learn technology and use technology, helping business owners become more profitable, stay in business, helping, people in, I don't just look at it as the people on the top, but all people in an organization by helping forklift operators, truck drivers use technology more effectively. They're at the front, and in a world that demands real-time data, it's critical that they not just understand, not just listen, but understand how it benefits them and everybody else in the chain. So they're committed to it. Everybody thought that truck drivers would be so against putting cameras in the truck, watching them drive, seeing what they do. They're not. They like it. Why? Because it protects them. Those that are good truck drivers,
It's
it's
interesting.
protected them in accidents that were not their fault and proving that they weren't doing something that they shouldn't have. So it's how you use technology in a world where we can't avoid it. I mean, it is part of us, including, the artificial parts within so many people today.
That's really interesting too. So look, you've been a part of digital transformations in several companies, right? So what's the commonality from one company to the other in maybe the thought process when it comes to a transformation? because real quick, each project you've worked on over the years, the times have been different. Like if you work on a project now, the times around us, the things happening around us, to your point just now, they have a context now. But then every project you've worked on, every company you've been in, they've all been about transformation. Is there an underlying theme that's always true about digital transformation whenever it happens?
You just made me think of it. I mean, I wouldn't have, but as you asked the question, I smiled because it goes back to your first question. So when I first came out of, I didn't even go to it. When I went to learn how to become a programmer, computer developer today was called a programmer in those days. There were only 3 places you could learn. One was Chubb in Long Island, or Chubb was in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Grumman in Long Island, and
Yeah.
NYU. And NYU didn't have a full program in computer programming or anything like that in those days. This was school for continuing ed. I left Columbia University going for my master's in social work to attend NYU's School of Continuing Ed, but and became a computer programmer. But the reason why I'm linking to that is in my very first development, where people were really coding on mainframes in those days, I had the ability to work on Wang computer systems. And Wang were high tech at that point. They had moved from word processing machines to really quick development where you were able to prototype systems. You were able to prototype the screens, able to prototype the reports, get validation that it was what your customers wanted, and then develop it. And so just think of that base premise. You speak to your customer, you understand what they want, you show it to them as a quote unquote, is this what you want? Yes. And then you deliver it. Well, 40 years later, I don't care what transformation we're going through. Step 1 is listen and understand what your customers want. And there are too many people still trying to sell rather than doing step 1. And I always begin with step 1 because they're not the same. No 2 companies the same. Even one company in multiple locations is different in different locations because of the people, the customers, the products, whatever, the culture. To assume it's the same is foolish. To assume it's not and then validate what's the same is much better.
That's a brilliant point. I mean, it really is. And it comes down to the people. It comes down to people's needs and really just solving problems. And that's never going to change. I mean, I guess that's why people who are really good at listening and identifying what the problems are, and then being able to take that and translate that for a customer or for a business that you're working with. You're right. It's not sales. People could look at that and say, well, that's selling, but it's really not. I mean, the service has to be provided by somebody. So technically, yeah, it's sales, but it's not. Well, maybe it is if we define sales as listening to somebody, understanding what their problem is and solving their problem in a very efficient way where the end result is tangible. They can feel it. It actually has an impact.
I would share, this is when language is so important. And most people, once you say sales, people feel like they're being what? Sold to, right?
It's like a dirty word.
Yeah, because they feel like somebody's trying to push their intentions on me. It's not about me, and that could happen not even in a sales role, just in communications. People could feel spoken to as opposed to listened to in communications. So to me, the language of sales, trying to sell somebody versus being a partner, a trusted advisor, a partner,
That's it.
Helping them solve a problem. And it's always, how I try to present myself truly and distinctly. Doesn't mean that I'm not trying to make some money in the process, and I share fairly what the costs of my services are, but I also point out that it's not just an expense, but an investment and what they could expect for that investment. Always realizing that, unless I do that, they perceive me and you as an expense as opposed to value add until something happens. And then they realize how value add you are.
Before we kicked this show off, we were there's so much to talk about with you that, and it can go in so many different directions that it was hard to nail down what our theme of this show should be today with you. And that's, for the years that I've known you and the conversations that we've had, that really sums up everything. It's about the trusted advisor relationship, and that does supersede everything. And that's, of course, everybody deserves to be paid. Of course, you can look at it as sales, but it's everything. I mean, that trusted advisor relationship goes back to the beginning of time. And when you feel that you can trust the person that's giving you advice, that they've got your best interest at heart, and that you're not being sold, it's not even a part of the conversation being sold. It's yeah, I know this person's looking out for my best interest. I know that they're giving me the best advice they can give me, and they're going to make sure that I don't get hurt, and they're going to give me good direction. That's what it's about.
You know, it's equally, and I would say more important in the healthcare profession, and in some places it's lost. But, you know, I was very fortunate. The doctor that delivered me also delivered my mom. And, you know, it was like a Marcus Welby. I mean, I would trust him with anything. I dislocated my elbow. I was 11 years old, and I didn't want to go back to the hospital because I was in hospital 3 days the prior year for breaking my radius and ulnar. And he goes, no, you need to go to the hospital. I go, well, don't you know how to do this? And he goes, yeah, but I've never done one. And my response was, I trust you. And literally in his office, my father held, may rest in peace, held my upper arm. He snapped my arm back in. And, you know, that was the trust you had in your doctor. You know, who has that kind of trust in your doctor today? Very, very few. Small,
very few.
Not nobody, very, very few. So, you know, how do you do this in a world where today more than ever, people are disconnected and virtual? So what I do is really try and build everything off of relationships, industry organizations that I connect with to learn from, figure out who are the experts in those industries, so that I could, you know, when people have questions of me, it's not always me that has the answer, but who I know. I provide great value to manufacturers, distribution companies, logistics companies, not always with my direct services, but people I know that could help them with their specific challenge at that time. So those relationships are critical in a world that continues to change astronomically. You know, each year of my professional career, it changes faster and faster.
Yeah, and as much as it's changing, what you just said, it will never change. The human being, human nature, those relationships. So we have the people that are closest to us, our immediate family, and then we have our close friends, and then we have this people that we choose to surround ourselves with in different environments. But is it not the truth that no matter where we go, we tend to want to seek out the people that we are most comfortable with, whether it be in a room or it be in a community? It's never going to change people. So if you, as a trusted advisor, that's a powerful, powerful concept, you know, for people in business today who maybe are trying to shortcut it or trying to use sales tactics. You don't have to really shortcut it or reverse engineer it. You just gave the answer. It's relationships.
But yes, and to cement that, you know, the best relationship you have is with your current customers. You know, your current customers are not, gee, I sold them something, we did some business a while back. They're your current customers. Check in on them. They may need additional services from you, and they can refer you to other prospects. So I get so much business from customers who call me back 10, 15 years later. I helped one customer originally put in RF technology to do barcode scanning. They recently called me back to help them select a new warehouse management software platform, just because I was somebody they could trust originally, somebody they knew they could trust now in managing a significant change for this third-party logistics company. You know, and this is where your reputation means everything. And so being involved in organizations where your reputation grows, you end up getting more references and, you know, obviously getting involved in conferences, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I hope even more as a moderator of panels, somebody who presents on topics like supply chain digitization. That gives me great pleasure to do that.
Yeah, and it's a way, it really is, look, it's all about delivering value, right? I mean, we're having this conversation today for one reason, right? We hope that we're going to have somebody watch this that gets inspired and motivated, and maybe it's somebody who's in business, and our conversation right now about relationships and how important that is. That's what it's about. So when you sit on those panels, you're delivering value.
I want to just expand on that one other way before we take that any other direction. The number one challenge across America today is people, acquiring and retaining talent across the board, and especially in the supply chain industry, but not merely healthcare as well. Amazon announced yesterday, I put something on LinkedIn, posted this morning, where they're going to invest in people to get their degrees, a BA. If you work for Amazon, they'll pay for your tuition. And other companies are doing similar things because they cannot attract the talent to keep up with the demand. So it's all about people. Everything's about people. And without people, we're not getting stuff done. It's how do we enable people to do things better, faster, more efficiently in a world that's changing so quickly. And we must keep up to survive and thrive.
You know, along those lines, when you deal with businesses and you're dealing with a business owner, right? And maybe that business owner's mindset isn't quite there yet, where they know they have to make some changes, but they're resistant to it. What do you find is I almost said what's the trick, but it's not really that. What is it that you do? Like, what do you say to get somebody to look at something differently, to realize that what you're telling them is in their best interest? Because you know that if they don't make a change with something, 1 or 2 years from now, you know that their business is going to be left behind. You know that they're going to be struggling. How do you navigate that conversation?
So it's difficult. At the end of the day, you really don't have the control. It's really understanding who you're speaking to and where they're at. Tony Robbins did a whole bit a number of years ago, and I listened to his personal power tapes about how all the therapies worked and all the therapies didn't work. But when therapies worked is because there was leverage. Somebody knew that they must change. There was more pain associated if they didn't change than if they did change, and so there was a need to change. They were motivated to change. It's the same thing when people finally stop smoking cigarettes. They could say, I had a guy who worked for me. He went for acupuncture. He told me I'm going for acupuncture. It's going to help me stop smoking. So he comes out of the session. I go, did it work? He goes, no, the whole time I was there, all I could think about is, when is this going to be over so I can go out and have a cigarette? So it's about leverage, right? So I don't try to convince people if they're not there. What I try and do is figure out where people are and help them understand why they should, without trying to be pushy about it or assertive about it. Certainly, depending on first of all, people are motivated more by pain than they are by pleasure. In your industry and cybersecurity, I was just in a session last week in Atlanta. They were talking about how many third-party logistics companies have been hit. So there's an opportunity for us to chat on that at another point. But my point on that right now is that that's when people respond, right? After the hurt or after the pain. So sometimes it's pain that's the motivator. They're hurt, they made a decision that was a bad one, and now they know they need help to make a good one. Sometimes it really is motivated by the carrot. And when it is, I find it's mostly by there's an opportunity, a customer or a prospect that says, I really want you to or need you to do this. And then there's an incentive to push the edge of that envelope to look and do things differently. Once they do, and what I firmly believe in, going back to the people side, and this is where my psychology background comes in, just by making a decision of a change of your core, what I call them is your systems of record, the foundation of your company, your systems of record, accounting, warehouse management, order management, transportation management. if you make a decision to change that and bring a new one in, you not only have an opportunity to have that system be more efficient, you have an opportunity to change everyone's behavior in the spirit of we're implementing a system, not SAP like where you come across and people really resist it, but no, hey, here's how we did it, but here's how we're going to do it because look, it's going to make your life better, my life, we're going to get more data, better data this way, our customers are going to be happier. And that motivates change in such a powerful way. So in the process of implementing a system correctly, you could achieve those benefits. But it's not about let's put this in module 1, and we're going to teach you how to enter A on the first screen, enter 1, and when it's not a 1, we enter a 2, but only when you enter an asterisk, and make sure you're taking notes.
You settled in a long time ago into the logistics industry, but I'm not sure did you mention how that happened or why you ended up in that sector?
Totally by accident. As I said to you, my father, may he rest in peace, was a truck driver. So, I tell people now I was born into the supply chain industry very proudly. Right. And, I did ride the truck with him and always realized, how hard he worked and, what an honest and critical profession it was to deliver goods to customers and, whatever they needed it. But I lost my train of thought. What was the question? Sorry.
Oh, so you've been in the logistics
supply chain, why logistics and all of that. So the foundation of that was surprisingly, and I didn't realize it till later, I always looked at the foundation of my career as Pepsi. I early in my technology career, I had an opportunity and I spent 3 years as a developer for Pepsi. And that's the foundation. I mean, they were Fortune 50 company. They were leading edge. They didn't hire a lot of people, but they hired the quote unquote, the best of the brightest, best and the brightest. I consider myself fortunate to have been considered part of that, and only left because for my own career growth. And I chose to leave to take an opportunity at Mutual New York because I thought it would be a faster path to director of IT, which it was. And ultimately there at MONY, I was responsible for the 7x24 IT operations for MONY. So there was definitely a significant career step in doing so. But I learned so much at Pepsi, and it wasn't until I started my business as Advantage Technology Solutions and honed in to, warehouse logistics companies first, then into distribution and manufacturing, that I realized the foundation of my supply chain career was Pepsi. I was writing software to help them track the sales and promotions of the soda that they owned in their own franchises, not the independent franchises. Business, I leveraged an opportunity, and the first opportunity was helping this customer implement barcode scanning. And you would think, well, what's the big deal? You just scan a barcode. Well, no system today interprets those barcodes the same way. And nobody could just take a can of anything or a box of anything and just go, hey, just scan that barcode and it's just going, everybody's got it, there's the barcode. No. Everybody got different systems, different way they read it. I like it this way. Some people don't use barcodes. And so just to be able to scan and take him from really where he had a lot of inventory inaccuracy and shipping errors, which were costly, and he had to pay for, to 100% inventory accuracy and location, where if somebody came in and looked at the system and said, where's this product? Says it's over there, that product was over there, 100%. In fact, that's a video that's on my website with that very first customer who gave me a video testimonial for it. Very proud. And he talked about, not about me, talked about how he felt when his customer saw that. And that's what makes me feel great. Those are the things that make me feel great, that I could have that kind of impact and help them really leverage technology.
Yeah, and that's huge. And so you didn't really, you really didn't fall into it. You really did have this background that I guess it sounds like it was natural for you to, if you were going to start to go into your own consulting and advisory services, I'm hearing that it was a natural path, like you were comfortable in that space.
I would, yes and no, I mean, this is lessons for other entrepreneurs, right? So why did I become an entrepreneur? Because I was let go from a company for the second time, and for no fault of my own, just because as I advise young people today, the corporate world could be like a game of chutes and ladders. And, you think you're getting up there, you're up there, and all of a sudden there's an acquisition or somebody else comes in and
Yeah.
likes his own people and doesn't like you for some reason. And now you're back at the bottom, working your way back up again. So I realized, 18 years ago that it was equally risky for me to find a job and assume that the person I worked for would still be there 2 years later than it was to try and take a shot and start my own company. But I wasn't, 100% focused. I knew I was going to leverage, which I still do. Here's my advice for anybody, think about what you're good at, and then think about, where are there markets, job opportunities, and where you could apply what you're good at. It's one of the reasons why I entered technology. I knew there would always be a wide sphere of choice. I wouldn't be boxed into anything, and that I could choose, because never could I have assumed what would have happened. But that was my thinking when I entered, that there would be choice, and there still is. At this point in my life, where some people are retired, they're done, they don't see much choice. I see choice everywhere. I do, and I'm still excited by it.
You just touched on three things, and I hope I get them all right because I didn't write them down. One is risk, the willingness to take a risk. Two was opportunities and the ability to see opportunities that others possibly don't see. I should have written the first one down. The first thing you said. Well, these are common characteristics that every entrepreneur that I've ever spoken to, they all have. Oh, it was security. The first one was security. Of course, it's an illusion. Like, it's a total illusion. If anybody out there thinks that you're working for somebody else and you have some sort of security, you might have leverage. That's a good word. You might have leverage because you know more than anybody else about a particular job that you're doing. But at the end of the day, you really don't have a lot of control over the outcome. And so what you did was brilliant. And I'm telling you, it's what I find is common among most entrepreneurs that went and did their own thing. You begin with the end in mind. I don't mean literally the very end, but I mean that there's a vision, there's some thought behind it. You build out systems and a foundation for what it is that you're going to build and what it is that you want to do. But there's thought. Like, you're not just throwing something at the wall to see what sticks. And I'm hearing you say that, yes, you took a risk, and yes, you see opportunities, and yes, you took the opportunities, but it was a strategic risk. And certainly you didn't say it, but and I know you always could have gone back to corporate America. So there's some safety in that. But I have found that, and I have the same background as you in terms of working for corporate, getting to a high level. And I ended up resigning from a position at that level because my side business was beginning to grow, and I decided I wanted to take the risk. Right. So it is an interesting mindset. And when we are talking to business owners or entrepreneurs or people that may be considering making the move, there's never a bad time to make it. There's never a good time to make it. You make a plan and you give it a shot. You give it a shot.
That's the first thing, is to have a plan, right?
You gotta have a plan.
And I did have a plan for what I was going to do. And, you could shift that plan, it may have been Tony Robbins or somebody else, but talks about, and I like to use checklists all the time. A pilot, no matter how many times they fly, use a checklist, a plan for what they do. I use a checklist every day for the things I'm going to do. What have I taken care of? What are my priorities? But, if the pilot's flying from Newark to LA, they're not automatons that just fly a direct route. They're constantly shifting. They're constantly adjusting. We live in a world today more than ever of volatility that takes adaptability, flexibility, adjustment but you need to, I love the term you used. I always focus on the outcome I desire, or more importantly, the outcome my customer desires. Never lose sight of that. What my desire is less important than what my customer desires in that business relationship. I'm like Amazon with customer obsession. But I want to touch on two things you mentioned before I lose it. And I wanted to, respect to my father, who passed away recently, and you know that. And
I do, yeah.
one is when I started my business, and he took money out of his IRA and gave it to me, never asked me for it back to help me get started, and I owe him everything. But he started to say these words. He said to me, Sandy, how long are you going to, and I stopped him right there. I go, this is not, I'm going to do this for 3 months and then go back. I go, this is my destiny. And it's almost like Cortez-like in burning the ships. I don't know if you've heard things like that. I'm sure you have. And
I know
other
burning the
entrepreneurs.
ships from Tony Robbins. He always
Yes.
says, burn the boats.
Right. And it was a true story where, and I'm almost certain it was Cortez, but it was like, they got to the island and, he burned the ships, and it was either we win or we die. And, in this case, it was, and it's really one of the blessings of being an entrepreneur is you're not looking backwards. You don't have to worry about who's backstabbing you or who may be pulling the rug out from under your feet. You're always looking forward. So it's really one of the benefits and the blessings. The other thing that, and I use it, as a lesson, a really valuable lesson. It's been a theme that I've been sharing in presentations and everything. He had a hearing disorder. He never graduated high school. And I was chatting with my son and him. We were at a resort one day, many, many years ago, 4 years ago or so. And my son was challenged. And I said, look at this man. And I go, no, didn't have a high school diploma, had a hearing disorder, but look what he's accomplished in his life. And what I said to him were these words: don't focus on what you can't do, focus on what you can do. And that is so critical. Too many entrepreneurs are all over the place. Hey, I had this idea, I had this idea, I had this idea. No, you have to, not that you have one idea,
Focus.
but you need to be focused. I've never lost focus. Do I branch off in new directions? Constantly, because technology and supply chain are changing. But I'm always strategically, like that pilot in an aircraft, where am I and where am I going? Not starting a bakery. I'm not starting, not that I don't have hobbies that I don't enjoy, but from a business entrepreneurial focus, that is so critical. It's commitment and focus are really key.
You just gave it. I mean, that's a lot of powerful stuff. The idea that things are always changing, and that we both are trusted advisors to our respective clients. They don't. The client doesn't know that they're always changing, right? For the most part, they're doing their thing. They're focused on their business. We're there to tell them. You're there to tell them that, listen, here's what I see. Let's not be cemented into what was, because just because something was doesn't mean that it always has to be. And let's look at what the opportunities are that are ahead of us. If you do X, Y, and Z, this could happen, right? A, B, and C could happen. It could benefit you. It also could not happen. It's a really powerful mindset to realize that the position that you're in with your customers is one where, when they do trust you enough to take that guidance seriously, even in spite of the fact that they may be, because I find that most people are. So even though people that you're working with may be afraid to make change, and it's not even conscious, it's just natural. They're coasting, they're doing well, but at any given moment, you're coasting and you're doing well. You could, for a variety of reasons, begin to lose business. It could be, look, during COVID, people lost business. It had nothing to do with the level of service. It had nothing to do with the quality of service. It had to do with their business just contracting. But even in the most difficult of times, you as an advisor, giving people advice on how they can pivot and how they can look and how they can see new things, it does keep them forward thinking. And in a way, you're a calibration tool, right?
Well, I could be a tremendous asset to them. And, for those that recognize that I'm really coming from a place in their best interest, right? Because most of the people they're dealing with are really trying to sell them something, software, hardware. And what I would say, Matt, and it's really true, I think there are three areas that could intimidate people: medical, legal, and technology. And you could speak in terms in any one of those. that totally intimidate people where they're afraid to even ask a follow-up question, depending on what acronyms you use, the terms you use, as opposed to Stephen Jobs, who hired salespeople and told them, I want you to explain what a pixel is to a kindergartner. And if you could do that, I know then you could communicate about technology. So, it's first of all, just connecting with them. I don't think, certainly there's resistance to change. There always was, still is. But I believe right now, people are stressed out royally. And they're either stressed out from a negative place or they're stressed out in a positive place where they have too much business. There's stuff in the aisles. They can't even keep up with it. They're consumed, and managing change is difficult. It's not buying something. You're not buying a magic wand. You have to. So it's why I position myself as a general contractor, helping them work with the vendor, work with all the resources to build a house. Start with the foundation, then get your first floor, second floor. Whenever you're ready to do it yourself, you want to paint the bedrooms yourself, God bless you. But as long as you need somebody to help you, I will help you all the way until you finish that house. And, in some ways with companies today, the house is never completely built because this is a house of malleable walls that's constantly changing in the world we live in every way. Physically, look at what's happened in the last 18 months. What is work? Work is no longer you go someplace and work. It's a combination for many of virtual, hybrid, some in the office. So all those boundaries are changing drastically.
Everything's changed. And even as we sit here and when we have this conversation, nobody really knows how things are going to settle in, if they're going to settle in, when they're going to settle in. But what we do know is everybody's been able to, well, I shouldn't say everybody. There's been a lot of adapting. There's been a lot of figuring it out. And out of that, there's new businesses have come out. People have figured out new ways to do business.
Absolutely.
People have, most importantly, begun to and learned to use technology differently to get through it. So we've evolved.
Couldn't agree more. There's so much more I want to say, but just on that note, just as a follow-up, I think medical had a very, very major obstacle obliviated. So now telemedicine, which was, whoa, I don't know if we got telemedicine. Telemedicine is comfortable. So that will be a cause in motion. Education, absolutely. Where, little ones need to go to school. There's no doubt about it. But if you're a high school senior, do you need to be in school? No, you should be working, and combination of learning and working. And so there are variations and teachers need to learn how to teach via technology, which they were way, way behind. So one of my mentors was Napoleon Hill, who wrote a phenomenal book, Think and Grow Rich, which I encourage every entrepreneur to read.
One of the best books ever written, ever. I've read it 7 times. An unbelievable book.
So the quote I still keep on my wall today, and why I brought it up, is, in every adversity, there's a seed of an equal or greater benefit. It's just so true. And even in this pandemic, in the rottenness of news that we hear, there's so many positive new things that are coming out of it, but we don't hear enough about it. So we will have to continue this discussion because I know we didn't get everywhere that you wanted, but we had a pretty good wrap, I hope.
This is a great conversation. It's a great conversation. We spoke today to entrepreneurs. That's who we spoke to, and a lot of really good information came out. A lot of really good advice, and I find so much value in speaking to people that have been through different decades, right, and experienced different economies, experienced different businesses. And even what you're experiencing now is something you've never experienced in your life. So it's like, it's so valuable to have somebody like you come on the show. And, we did jump around a little bit, but we have a common theme. And the common theme is, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business owner, that trusted advisor relationship and relationships in general is what it comes down to. And I think that is a good place to wrap it up. So Sandy, thank you, man. I really appreciate you coming on today. Again, just tremendous source of information. And look, everybody that watches this show, again, that the show is meant to inspire you. It's meant to inform you, and it's meant to educate you. I want to help you. I want to help you reach your potential. So do the work and be humble in the process. Remember this, hope is not a strategy. You've got to take action. Sandy, thank you again.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it.